Well, hello, friends. I do hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Take 5. This week, we're dealing with a subject that I've simply entitled Everyday Faith. Now, I didn't preach Sunday, so I don't really have a message to break down. But what I'm doing, I'm adding to a list of items that I started back in the middle of January. I gave you about 8 things there in a list of things that are just random occurrences of faith, points of faith that we should learn as we look at the Scriptures. And so I'm just taking this week to add to that list, and that's why we're calling this thing Everyday Faith, because this is something that we need each and every day of our life. Yesterday, we looked at one simple point, and that was this, that faith has to be willing to take a risk. There's always a risk involved when you live by faith and walk by faith. Peter found that out. And you have to know, though, when he got to the end of his ministry, even though it cost him his life, Peter would tell you that the risk was worth the reward because faith paid off. God honored his faith every step of his life. Today I want to deal with another thought. That's simply this. Faith knows that God's there even when you can't see Him, you can't feel Him, and you can't hear Him. Now that can be tough. Now we might get past the can't see thing, but when it comes to I can't feel Him and I can't hear Him, then that makes things difficult. Those quiet moments when it seems like that God's not saying anything, those times can be difficult. And faith has to know that God's there even when He's not saying anything, even when you can't sense His presence. Faith has to know that God is there. They're just these times that come in our life. I can't explain why they come. God has a reason for the things that He does. There are periods of time when we are holding on to faith that there just seems to be no active change or active growth in our situation. Farmers call this a period known as quiescence. That's when you're in a holding period. Nothing's happening. Things seem to be dormant. And what's happening, though, is the circumstance are waiting for the right conditions, and at the right time, that seed will begin to germinate and grow. But until then, it's in quiescence, and that means it's simply a holding period, and those times can be hard when it comes to faith. And that's the times that we have to hold on like never before. When God is silent and God is unrevealing in His ways, that's the times that we have to hold on. Understand something, when God gives us a prediction or an ending or a promise that He's going to do, He is not required to say anything from the start to the finish. Because when God tells us about the finish of a thing, He's going to do it. He is. And so we just simply must hold on by faith until the end. But it can be really hard through these quiescent or holding periods. It can be very hard. Consider Noah real quick, if you would. After spending all of that time building that boat, now Noah's got to put his family on the ark with all of these animals. The Bible says in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that same day, all the fountains of the deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. The rain was on the earth 40 days and nights. And in that same day, Noah went in with all of his family. They had every beast after his kind, and all of the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing after his kind, and every fowl and every bird after his kind, and of every sort. All of them went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, and they went in, male and female of all flesh, as God commanded them. And here's the thing, and the Lord shut him in. Bam! God shut the door. Now, when Noah was building the ark, he had some control over what he was doing. But now he has no control over anything. God has shut the door. There's no rudder on this ark. There's no sail. There's no motor. There's nothing to control where this thing is going to go. He now finds himself at the complete and total mercy of God. But I'm going to tell you now, that's the best place you could be, is at the complete and total mercy of God. It's scary sometimes, isn't it? It's hard, it's difficult, But faith knows that is the best place that you can be, even when God is not saying anything, even when He is quiet, when you can't see Him, hear Him, or feel Him. In those quiescent, holding periods, faith has to know that God still knows exactly where you are. You know, sometimes God has to shut us in to keep us from running off in fear or making a mistake. No doubt Noah would have made some drastic mistakes if God had have given him paddles and oars and rudders and sails. Noah would have probably made some very terrible mistakes. And so God shut him in and put him in this place for 1 year and 10 days inside that ark. He stayed there and he was in a holding pattern, and he had to know that God knew where he was even though he didn't know. He had no idea where that boat was floating around and bumping into stuff and going here and there. He had no idea where it was, but there was one thing that he could hold on to, and that was this: God knew where he was. You know, Job had kind of the same situation going on, and he put it in some real powerful words that I want to read to you before I leave you today. The Bible said in the midst of all of Job's trial that Job answered and said, "Even today my complaint is bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find God, so that I might come to His seat. If I could find Him, I would order my cause before Him, and I would fill my mouth with all of my complaints." He said, I go forward and He's not there. I go backward and I can't perceive Him. On the left hand, I don't see Him. On the right hand, it's as though He's hiding Himself. He said, but there's one thing that I know. He knows the way that I take. And when He's tried me, I shall come forth as pure gold. Did you hear what Job said? Job said, if I knew where he was, I'd go to Him. I'd lay my petitions and my prayers and my complaints out before Him. And I know how He would answer. But the fact is, I've went forward, I can't find Him. I've went backwards, I can't feel Him. I've looked on the left hand, I can't hear Him. I've looked on the right hand, and I can't see Him. I don't know where He's at. Watch this though. But I know He knows where I am, and that's enough for me. Friend, that's it. It doesn't matter whether or not we hear God, see God, feel God. It doesn't matter how long our holding period is, because we know this one thing. Faith knows that God knows exactly where we are. God knew where Noah was in that boat when he was bumping and spinning around in that flood. God knew where Job was when Job was in the middle of the greatest trial of his life. And wherever you are today, God knows exactly where you are. You may not have heard Him. You may not have seen Him. You may not even have felt Him. But friend, God knows where you are. Put your faith in Him, because you may not can hear Him or see Him, but He knows exactly where you are, and He is taking care of you. Well, hey, it's been good being with you. I've got to get out of here today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Wednesday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, friend, trust the Lord. He will never fail you.